Welcome to the Whole Pack, where we challenge black and white thinking in holistic pet care and dive into the controversial topics everyone's thinking about but nobody's saying out loud. I'm Sunny Gandera.
And I'm Melissa Sherman, and we are two holistic pet health practitioners here to prove that holistic care can include critical thinking, self-care, and yes, even Western medicine when needed. This is a judgment-free community we wish we'd had when we started our journey.
Hi, and welcome back. We're excited to have this next episode. So if you joined us for our last episode, we talked about credentials. We talked about what certification is versus license. So if you didn't listen to that, I do encourage you to go back and listen to it, but it's not required. So this episode, we're actually going to flip the conversation a little bit for pet parents, pet guardians. How do you hire somebody? How do you know who to work with? How do you know who to trust in the industry now that you know what certification means and just the variance in certifications? So today we're just going to flip the conversation. If you're looking for someone to help your animal, how do you know who to trust? So if credentials aren't the whole story, Sunny, what should pet guardians actually be looking for? I mean, where do we start, right?
Yeah, sometimes it may sound like a simple question, right? You go to someone's website, you get their credentials, you check their reviews, but sometimes when I find, at least when pet parents have an animal that's sick or aging or struggling or maybe just received a cancer diagnosis, as in so many of my clients, it becomes more difficult because they can't really see straight, fear will change the way that we make decisions. So that's why we wanted to do this episode, to just kind of maybe furnish you with some, options for what to ask the person, right? So I think that, many people, what we do, or let me say what I do as a holistic pet health coach, which you are too, but you're also an animal communicator. But I think that the emotional layer is so important. And we talked about this a little bit offline, but many people aren't looking for just information, right? If they come to you and they've just struggled so long, they're looking for hope. They are maybe looking for someone who'll listen after they felt dismissed elsewhere, and they want validation that they didn't cause their animal's illness. And so they might want permission, they're seeking permission to explore options outside of conventional care. And sometimes they just want someone to tell them that everything's going to be okay, or, and I think that a compassionate practitioner will understand those needs. Sure, we have to be qualified to help with your specific problems, but I think that a reasonable practitioner doesn't use those needs to create dependency or make promises, right, that can't be supported. So we have to look at it from a broader angle, and hopefully we can get into that in this episode with really specific questions and scenarios we might encounter.
So you touched on, I think the first step is like you mentioned, researching them, looking on, maybe a Google search, maybe start looking on social media, because the great thing, we talk about the evils of social media. The great thing is you can see if you're going to have a connection with somebody. At least, if they're doing a talking head video or they're talking about something, you can kind of get a feel for are you going to connect with that person rather than going into it cold? So, going to the website, Google business profile. So search their business on Google. That's a really good thing too, because a lot of practitioners will have that even if they don't actually see clients in person. It's a great place for reviews. So I'll put a pin in that, because practitioners, we're going to come back to why that's really important. But reading the reviews, and if there's a couple of reviews that maybe are 2 stars or 1 star, read them with discernment. But also read the 5 stars with discernment too. You want to someone might have had a really bad experience, but it really wasn't the practitioner's fault. But that is you see that in the review, that they're blaming the practitioner. But at the end of the day, maybe it was a terminal illness that could not have really been helped, but they're kind of just really read the reviews with discernment is what I'm saying. Like, don't dismiss something because they have like one star or, look to see if the reviews sound like just friends and family too, because that's that's going to be a little bit of a red flag. But look at Facebook recommendations. That's another great place for reviews. Look for their business page. Look at what kind of reviews they have there. Are they associated with any, both of us have different professional associations. So like look for something like that, because that means that they're actually part of a collaboration group where it could mean many different things, but they are actually part of a network of other professionals, which, I think that's really important. Referrals from people you trust. Especially if they had something similar to what you had going on, that's really going to show you what kind of experience you might have there. Do you have anything to add to that as far as researching?
Yeah, I love all of those, and that's something that I would do personally if I was looking for a practitioner, right? But I think that we also need to know, so competence obviously is important, and that's why we're looking for someone, right? So I think that, knowing we all specialize in different things. We can't know it all. Like our title is very broad, as I mentioned earlier, but like say someone might be extremely knowledgeable about feeding healthy adult dogs, but they're not trained, say, to formulate diets for renal disease or cancer, or in my area, like I specialize in like growing giant breed puppies. Those are very different, right? So someone might be wonderful at that emotional connection, but then they might not know how to interpret medical symptoms. So like really asking those questions and getting to know what are they, because I think we all look for sort of, what do you specialize in, right? Because we can't be like knowing everything. It's such a huge field. So that's probably in the competence area what I would add.
Right. Yeah. I agree. And, see what animals they do specialize in too.
Yeah.
If their focus is, primarily dogs and they do see cats, ask them about that. Ask what their experience with cats is. Because, as we know from talking to our guest and from what we know, cats are not little dogs. So we do want to make sure that you're working with a professional that does actually have feline experience, and vice versa. If you're going to a cat practitioner with a dog, what experience do they have with dogs? Because you just want to make sure that they do have a broad enough. I'll say I do both, but that's not the case for everybody. Some people just focus on one thing, and just make sure that your animal does fit into that scope. You're not trying to force something to fit into that.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do find, as so many, I just had a client sign on that found me through Google, talking about Google, but, you don't know that like she doesn't know me, right? Like she can go to my, Instagram or whatever. But for me, it would be like important to, about the caring part, obviously, like do they seem to truly care about your animal? Are they selling the same package to anyone? It doesn't matter what, right? Because then you might as well, go to, I don't know, another like traditional, like, conventional vet in a corporate world, right? Because that's what tends to happen there sometimes. Or, also integrity. And we mentioned that in the previous episode. Like, will they tell you, like, do they have some type of financial relationship with someone? Will they acknowledge when they're not sure? Will they tell you, and sometimes I work at a veterinary office, and sometimes there is a place for Western medicine. Will they tell you, like, what, I don't think the natural approach, like if your dog is like limping around after a surgery, oh no, I'm not going to give him gabapentin. Yes, you may want to, because for this period of time, so he's not in pain. So I think trust will require all those three things: the competence, the care, and the integrity, because, we are also different as practitioners, right? A knowledgeable person may not be ethical, and a kind person may not be competent, so there's all these things, and I don't want to make it sound like super complicated, but, these are just things to consider, right?
Yeah, so to simplify it, I have some questions here that I think are really good to ask. So ask the practitioner that you're meeting, whether they do a discovery call or not. These are things you can even just ask in email. It doesn't have to be like an official call, but what is your training? How long have you been doing this? Again, some of these questions might be answered by looking at their website, but there are things that you really want answers to. Do you continue your education? And I'm going to say, as Sunny and myself, we are part of different organizations where they are continuing education. They do bring on, the latest, we learn about the latest therapies or different protocols that are being introduced to the market. So are they continuing their education? Are they staying fresh? Or are they just keeping all the information that they learned from a certification program from 10 years ago? So you want someone to keep growing as an individual, because that's really going to cover all the bases to support you and your animal. Do you collaborate with other professionals? Like Sunny, she's collaborating with a veterinarian. She's working in the office. And when would you refer someone out? So that would be important to ask, because you want to know that they know when they've hit their limit, and they know when it's out of their wheelhouse and maybe they're not the best for you. And that would give you, I guess, a glimpse at their integrity as a professional, that they know, I'm not going to do this. I think, we talked about this a little bit before the episode started. Body work. Neither of us do body work, but we know some really great practitioners that we can refer you to. And it's not something, I'll do acupressure on my dogs. I might tell people a couple of spots, but that's not something I'm really interested in pursuing. I would definitely recommend somebody else. And we don't have to do it all. So do you have any questions to add to that?
One of the powerful things I always ask is, what are you not qualified to do? Because, sometimes it's like, I can help with anything. Yeah, I'm like in holistic healing that helps everything. That is a red flag to me. But I will also say, specific stuff. Like if you come with a certain case, don't be afraid to ask the practitioner, how will we measure whether your plan is helping? Is it just going to be general feeling, or are you going to track appetite, stool, quality, pain, mobility, sleep, all of these things? Get a feel for their experience and what they are. Is it really a program that is well designed? And then also what happens if my animal gets worse? Because that could happen. So you want a clear answer to these. And sometimes, worsening means that the recommendation isn't appropriate. Sometimes it means that it may be progressing. But I always ask these questions, because then I can kind of get a sense for, is this person really qualified, and have they done something similar prior? Because there are a lot of people out there in the interwebs, right? So we do need to be, and that doesn't mean we necessarily always assume everyone's terrible, but it is your baby, and you are coming to them, and you're trusting in someone. So and the person should be more than willing to answer all these questions and then some. And that's another thing, and not become defensive and be that's another red flag, right? Right. So, but I think those, and then again, just having that transparency, I couple of times, even yesterday, I did a little reel about a product that I recommended, and it's not because I want to make so much money off of it, but it's something that's truly helped my own animals and some of my clients. I've seen results, but I will be transparent to say something. I do receive a small commission from this, because I really trust in this. So making sure that they are upfront with that, and there's nothing wrong with earning income from a product, but transparency does matter. Right.
So since the flags have come up a couple of times, why don't we get into some green flags, and then we'll get into the red flags. So green flags, they explain things clearly, like what Sunny's saying. They're answering your questions without becoming defensive. If they start to become defensive, that is at least a yellow flag for me.
Yeah, for sure.
So they're welcoming the questions. They're honest about their limitations. They don't overpromise. They're not curing your dog of something or your cat of something, right? They're not overpromising. They are open to referring when it's appropriate, and they have some sort of, they're continuing to learn, whatever that means for them. So do you have any green flags, what you're looking for in your ideal practitioner as well?
Yeah, something that a lot of people come to me for because they haven't been listened to, right? So curiosity. right? Does that good practitioner will ask a lot of questions before offering answers. And so they don't just automatically hear the word itching and then immediately recommend the same supplement to every dog, right? So like really taking their time and, spending time with you and then prioritizing, for instance. Like, so, I was guilty of this initially, because when you learn like, oh my God, this could help and this could help and all this stuff, and then you have like 15 supplements. But no, when you really know like what you're trying to improve a situation, you want, not every case needs like 15 new interventions, right? So, because if we change everything right away, we don't have an idea of what helps. So like that sort of, I guess I would call it discernment, and not be in a rush, like you're going to be better tomorrow, like the holistic care takes a lot of time, much longer than we're used to. And that's why like we are always the last person they come to, because that pill that they expected to, change everything overnight, all of a sudden now is causing all these other issues. And then we're here and supposed to do the same. But, no, it takes time. Your body didn't get sick overnight, so we need to so having someone to explain that to you and not over promise, like you mentioned earlier, that's also a thing for me. Yeah.
So let's get into the fun ones, the red flags. So really guaranteeing results.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between testimonials and even if there's a pattern where they've had all these itchy dogs and they improve, it's still not a guarantee, because every dog, every cat is an individual. So no, they're not guaranteeing results. They're not claiming to treat everything. They're not curing disease. Discouraging veterinarian care is a red flag too, right? Because like, oh, you don't need them. We're just going to do this. And especially in the metaphysical world, you got to be careful with that. You got to be careful with the language that people use. It's a beautiful space. It also invites people that maybe are not working in their integrity. So that's why we're having this conversation. It's so important to really talk to people, get to know who you're working with before you start trusting every word that comes out of their mouth, right? If they don't explain their reasoning, I'm not okay with that either, especially if it's something that doesn't make sense to me, or if it's something that I've tried before and it didn't work and they're not listening. So listening again, right? If they make me feel pressure too, that's another. So like if they're making you feel pressure, like you got to decide right now if you want this. I'm not saying if they put a date on something like this offer is for a month, and basically if you don't respond in that month, that's not pressure. Right. I'm talking about like you got to make a decision. Do you want to do this $6,000 program today because spots are filling up?
I think like back to you were saying about dismissing veterinarians. They know nothing about nutrition. They only want to sell you drugs. You don't know my veterinarian, you know what I mean? So that's definitely, but also, a practitioner who discourages diagnostic testing, because, things like blood work and imaging and biopsies, or even urinalysis and physical examinations, they tell us what an animal may actually need. And then, of course, if someone, which I hope nobody is doing that's listening, is like recommending stopping medication without, talking to their vet, right? And so just because something is natural also, because that you see a lot, it's like, oh, it's natural, it's gentle, but it's like, it doesn't remove the potential for risk. There could be contraindications with medications and things like that. So I become very cautious of practitioners who interpret every outcome, as proof that their method is working, when there's so many layers too. So that's another red flag to me. I don't know. It just, there's so many layers to like each animal, that if someone is very convinced that, oh, what I did is like everything. I mean, of course it's great if the animal improves, but we do need to kind of put everything in perspective.
Yeah, I agree. So back to our previous episode, a credential should really just start this conversation where you're researching, it shouldn't be the end of it. Like, okay, check, they have a credential. You want to ask some of these questions. So just to pivot a little bit, now, we're practitioners. So how do we put ourselves in a position where we are this practitioner. We want to be this practitioner that, is the green flag practitioner for somebody. So what actually builds that trust?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're talking about reviews, and if you could actually talk to someone, I mean, that's not always the case, right? But like talk to someone who is independent of say like me, right? Like, did you have results working with Sunny, or did you have what was your experience working with Melissa? So like I think it becomes important to collect that evidence of real case evidence. Obviously practice as much as you can and get as many cases as you can, so that you can actually, and also taking on cases that you feel qualified to help with, right? Versus like, oh, it can be tempting in the beginning to just take anything. Oh, I don't really know much about physical therapy, but I'm sure I can figure it out, right? So you don't want to do that, because you want to think like, how can I, if that animal becomes successful, it helps me. But if they don't, it hurts me. And so it's a relationship, right? So right. I think also becoming again, curious and continuing to educate yourself, being humble, just knowing when you can help and when you can't help. And then one of my, the trust, I think, should really allow questions, right? Like trust should become stronger through transparency. So as a practitioner, you should be able to explain, like, why did I recommend this, right? What is the expected benefit? What's the potential risk? And you don't want to be scared to say that, because you want, again, to be transparent. And how will I measure progress, as I mentioned before? Mm-hmm. And when the plan will be changed, because I change plans all the time. I'm working with cancer. You know what I mean? Like not every week is the same, and it almost guarantee you that it's not the same. So right. Like you have to be flexible. So I guess, that's a long-winded answer to your question, but like thinking about all the ways that you can help the pet parent by being curious and being helpful in a way that allows them to have a plethora of options, at their feet, versus like, sometimes when we go to a veterinarian's office, it's like just one thing. Like for me, for instance, it's like either you do chemo or you don't, and there's nothing else, right. provided. When we can do nutrition, we can do, mushrooms and herbs and Chinese medicine. All of these things exist, but not everybody's aware of it or even believe in it, right. So I don't know if that answered your question, if I just went off on a tangent.
Oh, no. So, I mean, so that, like, I do wellness also in my practice, but, like, for me, where it's more animal communication and energy, it is more word of mouth. It is relationship driven. It's a little bit different. We're not going to really have a discovery call before like a 30-minute animal communication. Yeah. So it's a little bit different, but you can ask me any questions in email. You can look at the reviews that are on Google Business. So back to the Google Business. If you're a practitioner and you haven't set up your business in Google, do it. I mean, like Sunny just said, someone found her that way. I've had people find me that way too, because I don't see people in my home. Like that's where my business is. But to have that there, have reviews, have that opportunity for people to leave it, I can link that to my website, and now it's official. It's not just me quoting an email, right? Like these are things I don't have control over. So you're reading what people are putting in there. It's not, right? Like it's not, I'm taking a part out and putting that on social media. This is actually what they said word for word. So I think to me that has so much value. Same thing with the Facebook recommendations, right? Like you're seeing the people's true words, how they feel about it. How, for me, because it is a primarily relationship driven service that I'm providing, that's what you're looking for. Were those people connecting? Were their needs met in that way? It might not be measurable. Like, did this herb do this? It's different, right? Like it's a little bit like, did I support them in what they needed? And that's what you're looking for. So, did I demonstrate trust? So, you want to be clear with your communication.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And then we're going to hit those points again, referring out when you need to, being transparent about things, right? Like even the affiliates, like what you're saying, if you're promoting a product and you do get a commission, be transparent. Because I don't think most people care, but if they find out later that you were getting a commission, they're going to wonder, because you weren't transparent, was that your motive? Rather than,
exactly.
like you said, it helped not only your dogs, but your clients, so you want to share it. That's for me too. Like anything that I'm promoting, if you ever see me talking about a product, it's because I have tested it in my home.
Yeah.
And I like it. Like I would not recommend something that I haven't tried. And if I do, I'm going to say that right off the bat. I haven't tried this. I like the idea of it. But so just acting in integrity. What does that mean to you? Do you have anything else to add to that part?
No, I think that, just to summarize all we've been talking about. So, I just want to say that the right practitioner won't necessarily be the person who tells you what you most want to hear. I think that's really important. And they may slow you down because sometimes again, I'm bringing myself up, but like someone comes to me with a dog who's really sick with cancer. They're like frantic and they want to try everything. And then you have to like slow them down and be like, okay, they might simplify the plan when you believe more is better, like that's we're guilty of that, right? Or they may recommend another vet appointment. I do that all the time. We need to get more diagnostics. See, their body might change in 6 weeks. I want to know, because then we have to change the plan. They may even tell you I saw this supplement, everyone's using it. It may not be right for your animal. They may acknowledge that there's no perfect answer, right? Because honestly, do you want someone who says that? I don't know. I mean, you should be more informed after you talk to this practitioner than frightened, and understanding, as I mentioned before, the reasoning behind their plan, and then know what to monitor, and you should feel that the animal's welfare matters more than the practitioner's ego or brand or preferred modality, right? The openness around it.
Right. And for practitioners, what has brought in clients, the ideal client in the past? What's your best, where do the best people, where are they coming from? And, you just lift that up, put some more attention there. People don't refer. So, for me, most of my business is word of mouth. People don't refer practitioners they like. They're referring practitioners they trust, that they trust with their own animals. So, those referrals are so valuable. Thank your clients when they share, Melissa so-and-so for this. Email them, call them, thank them, share your gratitude with them, because them putting themselves out there, because anything that goes wrong, that friend's going to go back to the other person and be like, you recommended this person, right? So usually when people refer someone, they will stand by that referral and that recommendation. So cherish those people, really thank them, go out of your way to just show your appreciation for them. The goal is not to convince people you're good. It's really to just stand in integrity, look at what you're doing, look how you could communicate what you offer in the most trustworthy way.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to be the reasoning, you have to be the calm person, right? And it's not about a popularity contest, as you say. It's about getting results. That's what I'm committed to. It's I am committed to that animal, and I'm also committed to helping the pet parent, because I know that they feel lost and they've tried everything, and to be that sounding voice, that calm presence, and not, using scare tactics or any of that. That's what I would look at when I would hire someone, because you don't need, another 15 supplements or more to do on your list. You're already stretched thin. So I think that will be, we could probably go on and on, but did you have anything else to add, Melissa, on this? Because I know we are doing a trio of these episodes where we're helping lost pet parents, or maybe practitioners who want to know, how can I really communicate how awesome I am, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think we've covered it. It's, we don't want to become where clients are transactional. You want to keep that relationship. And I think that's the main point behind a good practitioner, is there is a relationship there. You're not just a number. And the second that you feel that you're just a number, or they're not listening, I mean, a lot of us, I will definitely speak for myself. I got into this because nobody was listening to me. And, you know, despite the research I was doing, I was made to feel small, like I couldn't know this stuff. And what am I talking about? I needed somebody that would listen to me. That didn't exist, right? Like that just didn't exist. Now it does. Now there's a lot of people that will. So it's just about using your discernment to find someone that doesn't treat you as a transaction, that does listen to you, that can support you. And sometimes that's what it is. That's what your consult is you're holding space for someone, you're listening to them, you're doing discovery, and that through that discovery, you're going to find ways that you can support them, whatever you're doing in the holistic pet space.
Absolutely. Great conversation. And so before we close, I always want to leave our listeners with some questions. Have you ever chosen a practitioner primarily because they made you feel hopeful? And did that turn into a thoughtful, collaborative relationship? Or did you later realize maybe that some important questions had not been answered? And what makes you trust someone with your animal? Is it their credentials? Is it their communication? Is it their willingness to admit when they're uncertain about something, or their results, or the way they treat you, both you and your animal, right? So, and for the practitioners also, like, do your clients understand exactly what you do? Do they understand what you don't do? And would you still make the same recommendations if there were no product, package, or financial benefit attached to it? We would love to hear your experiences. So share this with another pet parent and use these questions to begin a conversation before hiring your next practitioner, because trust should not require the absence of questions. Real trust becomes possible when good questions arrive in honest answers. So we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next time for yet another very interesting topic, right, Melissa?
Yes, I can't wait.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Before we go, we want to remind you that the information shared on the whole pack is for educational purposes only and is not intended to replace veterinary medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with your veterinarian before making any changes to your pet's diet, supplements, or healthcare routine. Every animal is unique, and what works for one may not be appropriate for another. We're here to empower you with knowledge, but your vet is your partner in your pet's individual care.